Game of Thrones Season 7.
Game of Thrones Season 7. Welcome back to In Defense of the Awkward Moment. With me, as always, is Michael Zupon.
Maester in Training.
Yeah, Game of Thrones Season 7. Super duper rushed. I binge watched it all in one day, thanks to this fine gentleman and to a lady off screen. Oh, Minnie, yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Binge watched it all in one in one go, including the season finale. And we discussed this a little bit off camera, but this season was equal parts. There's nothing happening, and there's everything happening.
I don't know why they had to put why they shortened these last two seasons, because they obviously needed the extra 3 hours worth of time, and I'm guessing they're going to need the extra 4 hours of time next season.
Because originally it was, Season 7 was supposed to be 8 episodes and Season 8 was supposed to be 7 episodes, but now it's even smaller than that?
Or I just didn't know. But the last two seasons are going to be 13 episodes between them, and that's not enough.
No, it's not. They spent 6 whole seasons waiting for winter to finally get there, and I'm really sure that Season 6 winter gets to Hardhome. And here at the end of Season 7... if we haven't figured out that there are spoilers.
Spoilers.
Here at Season 7, the Lich King and his brand new zombie dragon, which we'll talk about that here in a second, finally busts through the wall. Yeah. So, from a geographic standpoint, the wall's a hell of a long way from King's Landing.
Long way from King's Landing. Not so far from Hardhome.
Yeah, not sure what the Army of the Dead has been doing this whole time.
There's no in-show explanation for it, but my imagination was that he was basically covering the north, killing everything for numbers for his army. Giants, mammoths, wolves.
Which, I mean, yes, I get the fact that the dead are a little bit more expendable than your average foot soldier, but the numbers that we're dealing with in terms of combat throughout the series, we're dealing in, I've got a big army of 2,000 people, and I've got a big army of 3,000 people, and they've got a huge army over there, and they've got 20,000 people. Now, all of a sudden, you're talking about the Army of the Dead, which is, hundreds of thousands of people. So, I mean, he just wants this to be a rofle stomping when it finally happens. But, I don't... Nothing happening, and then everything happening, and then nothing happening. It was almost like watching the Lord of the Rings movies again.
Well, yeah. And like I said, if they had the 3 more hours of this season to stretch some of that out, because some of it felt really, really rushed. Some of it was really, really rushed. Like in the first 6 seasons, it took them 5 seasons to capture River Run. You had Lannisters and Freys camping outside that place for seasons. And then in one episode, you lose Casterly Larrock and Highgarden in about 15 minutes.
And there's no embellishment about that. And Casterly Rock, the Lannisters had wandered away from Casterly Rock, leaving a skeleton crew. That's fine. That is what it was supposed to do. But Highgarden,
you didn't even see a fight.
Build up there.
You saw nothing.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Jaime was walking in and having his last final chat with Olenna Tyrell. 7 seasons it took me to remember this woman's name.
Now she's gone.
I'm very sorry. Diana Riggs. I'm very, very sorry.
And she didn't even show up till like season 3. So
so passes the Queen of Thorns.
Yeah, spitting poisonous truth to her last breath.
But what a thing.
She went out well.
What
about as well as you can in this show. Much better than the Martells.
Yeah.
But the Martells didn't do anything right.
It's true. Arya, a little bit of redemption after some of the more plot armory shite that happens to her.
They were messing with my girl this season, and I didn't like it.
The business with her and Walder Frey. When you finally realized what was going down.
Oh, yeah. that season opener was the best.
Just absolutely stinking amazing. And for the most part, she hangs on to that for the rest of the season. She continues being the dour, creepy little...
I didn't like her getting all psychotic on her sister. That part was too much.
Okay, that's an excellent segue into the next thing that I wanted to talk about. Sansa Stark, still an idiot. But at least she's a little bit more honest about it, maybe, in this season. They have these, and they did it in season 6 as well. And to a certain extent, I think in season 5, where her and Littlefinger have these conversations where she acknowledges how much of a grade A douche Peter Baelish is.
But she keeps listening to his advice.
Then she keeps listening to advice, and they keep giving each other meaningful glances. And by the time the 7th season is here, it's just not cool anymore. There's nothing, I grumbled from the very beginning about how bad the foreshadowing was in this, and there's just nothing happening with Sansa anymore. She's just not an interesting character anymore. The extent to which she does repeatedly dumb things is just mind-boggling.
Well, she's walking this line between supporting what little family she has left and, until Bran shows up at least, realizing that without Jon, she would be the heir to Winterfell. Which, in her little pretty princess dreams growing up, she always wanted to be, she wanted to be the queen, and then she wanted to be a princess, and then somewhere along the line, being the Lady of Winterfell entered into that. But the way they beat all of her childish dreams and ambitions out of her throughout the series, really, that shouldn't have been a deal anymore.
Hey, I don't. At least they finally acknowledged that. They finally acknowledged that she wasn't a quick learner. But even then, it's like, okay, that's not stopped you from being stupid. But I guess that is what it is. And on the other end of that spectrum, the whole lead up, and they kind of acknowledge this on the internet after the season finale for season 7. The business, again, if I haven't said this already, super duper spoilers. The business leading up to the execution of Littlefinger in the Great Hall at Winterfell was so heavy-handed and so poorly done. And supposedly there were a couple of scenes that were left on the cutting room floor that would have explained how they got from Arya and Sansa being happy to see each other to Arya being super creepy to them suddenly knowing
Joining
everything
forces.
and joining forces and trapping.
And that's something that 3 extra episodes would have been able to help.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been... And that would have been cool. The payoffs. The payoffs for bad people dying. This show is repeatedly unsatisfying when it comes to people dying.
Except for Walder Frey.
Yes, except for Walter freaking Frey.
He had pie made out of his kids. Then he got his throat cut. Then somebody wore his face and killed his whole family.
Yeah.
That's my girl.
That was... But, I mean, Walter Frey was... Yeah, he was an ass, but he was a little fish in a pond of big, huge, asshole-shaped fish.
Yeah, but he was a little fish that killed her mom and her brother.
It's true. You could have spent those 3 episodes leading up deliciously to the death of Peter Baelish. And they just... Not only didn't they, but they rushed it.
The scene itself was supposed to be a reflection on how Peter betrayed her father when he went in front of the court.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. But they didn't spend enough time building that up. I agree.
Now, at this point, and I think we discussed this earlier, we are like well beyond the content in the books at this point, right?
Yeah, the books ended with Jon being killed, so that's 3 seasons ago.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. It was neat to see him finally get his, and the fact that Arya did it with a straight face was, again, they have officially built a creepy little assassin girl, and that's okay.
The best creepy little assassin girl.
The fight between her and Brienne of Tarth. I dug finally seeing all of the water dancing stuff
Unleashed.
from Serial Pharrell. 7 seasons. I finally remembered the name.
We've gotten to the end of the show. He's remembering people's names now.
I'm sorry. neat finally seeing the water dancing unleashed. That having been said, there were a couple moments, especially when she was holding the dagger, where she chose to try and stop Brienne of Tarth with main force. And again, I'm sure everybody was probably just gibbering and happy that they were finally in a fight, but that was one of those things where it wouldn't have happened that way.
Well, she did parry correctly down at the hilt instead of trying up here, at the edge of the blade.
That's just one of those things where it frequently comes out in, it frequently comes out in these things where skill trumps size every time. Well, no, skilled and small versus skilled and large. Skilled and large is going to have your ass on a spit pretty much every time.
Yep. You just have to be more skilled than small.
Yeah. And so I guess I'm kind of happy to see that fight ended up the way that it did. But yeah. More of Arya doing cool stuff in season 8, which I'm honestly legitimately worried about Arya doing cool stuff in season 8 because now she's no longer on the quest.
I'm not sure what her path forward is.
Yeah, right now she's back at Winterfell.
If she doesn't leave Winterfell again, she's pretty much a side player.
Yeah.
She's the master of spies or the master of whispers, but she doesn't get to go out on her murder hobo list anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty much done. So I worry about Arya's future in season 8. I really, really do. Cersei, shifting gears here, quite mad. And to be clear here, this is different than quite evil, which she certainly was. But she started kind of losing her shit. And I don't know if this was their way. My wife is reading these books too, and we've had some discussions about how, at least in the books anyway, her descent into madness is much more well described in those books. And I don't know if that's what they're trying to portray now, but her going from cold, logic-driven, chess-playing Femme Lannister to just half-crazed.
She's a little paranoid. Yeah. Not that she doesn't have some reason to be, but... her slide downhill has been coming since season 5. Do we honestly think that she's pregnant at this point? It would not fit in with the mythology that they have established.
So you mentioned mythology, and I want to go back here. I don't know how well you remember this. I want to say it's either at the beginning of season 5 or season 6. There's a flashback.
Her prophecy.
Yes.
Maggie the Frog.
Do you remember enough of that to elaborate on what that prophecy said?
Yeah. It's a big deal in the books.
Minister to me, sir.
All right. So when she was a kid, she and a couple of her friends went to this fortune teller.
Yeah.
Named Maggie the Frog.
Yeah.
One of them chickened out. The other sidekick asked if she was going to marry Jaime, and Maggie the Frog said, "No, you're going to die within a fortnight." After which point Cersei pushed her down a well, but they don't really talk about that in the show.
Oops.
The important one is Cersei asks if she's going to marry the prince, meaning Prince Rhaegar, because that was under discussion at the time between their parents. Mm-hmm. And she says, "No, you're going to marry the king." Came true. She's going to ask if she's going to have children. And she says, "You're going to have 3 kids. Your husband's going to have 17, implying Robert's bastard, tendency to screw around and present. But the prophecy is she's going to have 3 children. They're going to have hair of gold and shrouds of gold, and that they're all going to die before she does. And after the 3rd one dies, eventually something called the Valonqar, which in High Valyrian means little brother, is going to strangle her to death. Now, given Cersei's paranoia, she thinks this is going to be Tyrion, which is one of the reasons that she hates Tyrion. The fact that it is technically little brother could also be Jaime, because Jaime is technically the younger twin.
Interesting.
And of course, because it is High Valyrian and some High Valyrian words don't have gender, people have also tried to speculate it could be the Hound because he's a younger brother. It could be Arya because she's a younger sister. It could be, all of these different people.
Well, and I don't know how much of this comes out in the books versus the TV show. They do make a point of talking about gendered words in Valyrian. Mm-hmm. I want to say in season 7, when Snow.
Talking about the prince who was promised. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, it could be princess.
Yeah, so it's a gendered thing. So it's the younger sibling
Yes.
could strangle you.
But the fact that they're talking about strangulation, which is a very intimate form of killing somebody, you look into their eyes, you're very close to them. It requires a lot of sustained pressure. It's not just something, stab and go. I don't think it's going to be Arya, because Arya's a, hit it and quit it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be the Hound, because the Hound would just chop her down and walk away, saying something, dirty. I really think it's honestly, at this point, I think it's going to be Jaime, because Jaime once killed a king who threatened to burn down the kingdom. Cersei is well on that road.
Yeah.
And it would be a poetic circle for him to kill her.
Especially with how the business of Jaime and Cersei ended up at the end of the show, which I suppose I won't be hugely surprised by how shit goes down in season 8 either way, because on one hand, it's
Don't make fun of Jaime's golden hand.
see what you did there.
On one hand, clank.
Nobody, Tyrion included, should be taking Cersei at her word that
For
she
anything.
planned for anything. So,
So to get back, I don't think she's really pregnant, or if she is pregnant, she's not going to carry it to term. Just to finish that off.
Sure.
So yes, Tyrion, don't believe her. Don't trust her on anything.
Yeah. So if she does betray them, and it seriously hurts them, it's because people are idiots and weren't listening.
Yeah.
Which won't be surprising.
Which has been known to happen in this show.
And if she does betray them and people were expecting it, at this point,
it's an empty trap because they were expecting it.
Yeah. So I don't know. Was so wanting Clegane Bowl. I
thought it was going to happen.
Wanting.
If you had 3 more
Bowl.
episodes, it could have happened.
Sandor Clegane. There are a couple of characters that from the beginning of the show, or at least from the beginning of when they were introduced to the end of the show, have walked a well-written, just a well-written straight line. They haven't messed with their character arcs and their personalities and what drives them at all. They haven't made any sudden U-turns. Davos Seaworth is another one of those people that
Good man from birth to death. Except for that whole smuggling thing.
Don't mind me. I've just managed to live to a ripe old age.
Yeah, don't really pay attention to me. I'm just showing how to live in this crappy world.
But Sandor Clegane is another one who is just his character arc has been so pleasant to watch. Especially once they start doing them. I'm skipping ahead in my notes here. Once they start doing the Magnificent Seven thing in the last couple episodes of, was it season 6? No, it would have been season 7.
Yeah,
it would have been 7. When they all go out and try to capture a white to bring it back to we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I was warned. I
warned him. I warned him this episode's going to stink and you're going to hate it. And I was right. But Sandor, yes.
Yeah, gosh darn it, he's just from beginning to end. It's so pleasant to watch him. I was maybe not sad, but certainly disappointed when it looked like Brienne of Tarth had finished him. Great bit of television between him and between Clegane and Arya. Mm-hmm. We talked about that back in season 6, but was so stinking happy when he popped back up later on
with Ian McShane.
With freaking Ian McShane. His arc just continues to be so good. So good. Him and Davos. I'm trying to think at this point if anybody else has just really ridden a good straight line, and I'm not. Tyrion, maybe.
Well, Tyrion went from drunk to optimistic to. I mean, he's had his ups and downs, but he's had reason for them.
Yeah. And Varys.
Varys would be about the only one I could think of because he has his goal and he's not.
But they don't spend as much time. They don't spend as much time with Varys as they do Clegane.
Melisandre.
I see. That's She frustrates me. That's another one of those
course, she's
deaths
also-
that when it finally happens, it's not going to be nearly satisfying enough.
She's also not really a main, even as she's a tertiary character.
Yeah.
Sandor's, solid B level.
I mean, and see, I'm sitting here thinking about this in the back of my mind. Sorry for just bumping the mic. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not entirely sure what would satisfy where Melisandre is concerned. Would I be satisfied with watching Davos Seaworth slowly grind her into a pulp? Well,
Feed her to a dragon?
yeah,
Feed her to a White Walker?
I might be satisfied with that. But then, I don't... Would Davos do that?
Davos wouldn't do that. He's
don't-
too good of a man. It'd have to be...
That's another one of those things...
Gendry might do it.
Yeah. That's another one of those things that that's another death that I don't know.
How to make it satisfying enough.
The whole business with the Red Priests in general, and this is one of those... this was so poorly handled the more it unfolded. The fact that Melisandre ever failed, you're either getting instructions from a real god that exists and is enabling you to do horrifying shit, which clearly she was for at least a while. Mm-hmm. There was the business with the semen demon, there was the business with the prophesying, and then leeching the blood out of Gendry in order to kill, etc., etc.
Bringing Jon back from the dead.
Bringing Jon back, which by the time we get to the Jon back from the dead thing, she's already screwed up with
multiple times.
Multiple times. And I don't know if I can do this. How do you go from having a hotline to God, where it's not just that you've got a hotline to God, it's that he's listening to you because he's clearly enabling you to do all this. How do you go from there to, I don't know if I can do this, and I'm not going to pray to the red god, but I know some mystical juju with a bag of frozen peas and a ferret that will bring Jon back to life. that's where we ended up with her. And okay, so maybe the red god isn't all it's cracked up to be, or maybe Melisandre's flawed. But then you've got the Brotherhood Without Banners, and I still can't remember those fuckers' names. The one-eyed guy that's been brought back to life like 6 times now.
Beric Dondarrion.
Clearly his wino, Red Priest wino, has a hotline to God. But then you've got the other Red Priests over in Nureen that help make Dany's image better when she's off running around with the Dothraki.
They're more the laity. They're not the real clerics. From what I'm able to determine.
If they're not real clerics, they certainly had, the information about what Varys heard. What about the voice that answered back in the fire? Do you want to know what it said? Okay, so we've got all these people that are running around, and I don't know. The business... Your clergy either know what they're doing and they repeatedly channel the power of God when it's time, or they don't.
Well, the power of that God, as described in both the books and the show, is up to interpretation. It's a lot of fortune teller shit. Like when Thoros or Beric, whichever one, asked Sandor to look into the flames, and Sandor starts seeing shit.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff, it's visions, it gives you a hint, it doesn't give you answers. Melisandre's problem was that she was so sure in herself that she would look at the vision, jump to a conclusion, and then act as if that conclusion was the one and only correct answer.
But she does it frequently.
She does it frequently because she's arrogant. But
yeah, I don't know. It's like some kid with a light switch. The God is real. The God is not. The God is real. The God is not.
The God is real. The God is not as involved as
they would have everybody believe.
Yes,
but
or as a D&D God would be involved. Even he's not paying that close of attention. There's some kind of insight there. The way that Sandor was able to see the place where the White Walkers were, the way that Beric was able to see some kind of future, the way that Thoros was able to bring Beric back. Apparently, Beric is the only one he can bring back that way. Because you notice those red shirts didn't get any love before they went.
But apparently both Thoros and Beric can set their swords on fire.
Yeah.
Which
would have been handy if they'd done it more often.
Yeah, and if that's a learned skill, can you teach other people?
Yeah, that has something to do with being inflamed, infused with the holy fire.
Yeah.
Something with his priesthood and Beric, being half undead.
Yeah, it would have been handy for everybody to know when they were doing their whole Magnificent Seven thing. I really, really would.
Yeah, or, when they're standing out there on that frozen island. Would have been nice to have a fire. If only somebody had a flaming weapon.
Alas.
No? Okay. Anyway.
So, we talked about how useful it would be setting your swords on fire, which makes me want to go back and talk about that episode as a whole when they were Magnificent Sevening it.
That horrible.
Yeah, season, what I think was episode 6.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Perhaps the worst episode of the series.
There's been a lot of speculation online that the utter disregard for time is due largely to the fact that people are trying to write that show for TV now and not working off of R.R. Martin's books anymore.
They've been off the books for a while, and they haven't been doing this kind of horrible time travel, supersonic, thinking with portals crap.
You monster. For anybody who's watched the show but isn't quite caught on to what we're talking about here, season 7, episode 6, the Magnificent Seven are
and 4 red shirts.
Yeah, and 4 red shirts. It's Sandor Clegane and the Eye Patch and the Drunkard.
Beric and
Don't judge me.
Thoros.
Beric and Thoros. Sandor Clegane, Beric and Thoros and Jon Snow. Gendry. And a couple of other people who...
Tormund.
Yes, that's right. Can't forget Tormund.
Can't forget Tormund.
Giantsbane.
He is the Giantsbane.
And a couple of red shirts all decided that they were going to go north of the wall and capture a white. And bring it back to King's Landing. Bring it back to King's Landing to show Cersei so that maybe she'd throw in with all of them. And
or at least not stab him in the back.
Yeah, or at least not stab him in the back.
Too much to hope for.
And geographically here, just to kind of set the stage, we're well north of the shield wall at this point. Or the wall, the shield wall's mixing it up.
The wall.
Yeah. We're well north of the wall at this point. Meanwhile, all the way back down south, because Dragonstone is even further south from King's Landing, is it not?
Dragonstone is about 2 days' sail from King's Landing. It's in the same bay.
Geographically, is it north, south, east, west? Do you happen to know?
Slightly northeast.
Okay. So, a long way away.
About 1,500 miles or more.
From where they are.
From the wall.
Now, just thinking back about this episode hurts my soul so bad. They're wandering around, they're looking for whites. When they finally find a group of whites, they kill the small little band of whites, and then they discover the other 150,000 of them that were just quietly lurking around the corner because skeletons are quiet. And they send Gendry off to run back to the shield wall after they've been marching for...
We don't know how long they've been marching. It may have only been for a day. But it was still a good march.
Yeah, let's assume they've been marching for the better part of the day. Because the culmination of what happens... They stay overnight on the little island in the middle of the ice. And they wake up the next morning, and that's when time sort of
things
goes
wrong.
Weebly wobbly. And
yeah.
Now, they send Gendry the day before. They send him running back to the shield wall to alert the Night's Watch and to send a raven off
to
somewhere
to Dragonstone
for help to Dragonstone. So you've got the time that it takes Gendry to run back to the shield wall.
Gendry, who's never lived a day in the wilderness in his life, he's a city boy.
Yeah, they make a point. They make a point actually in the show of talking about how unused to the north Gendry is.
Yeah, has no acclamation to the north.
Yet
Is a blacksmith, so he doesn't run anywhere. His aerobic fitness is probably iffy. Yes, he can swing a hammer all day, but he skipped leg day.
So they run him all the way back to the shield wall, where he's only half conscious by the time somebody.
He collapses 15 feet away from the door.
In true cinematic
fashion.
And they send a raven off. Now, something, the airspeed velocity of an unladen something.
That is a fast. I've determined that a raven is no longer a bird. Raven is their wireless network, and it's actually a text.
The raven has to get from the wall
at least 1,500 miles.
1,500 miles south, and then Dany has to read the dispatch from the raven, agonize over what she wants to do, and then get on a dragon, which is also jet-powered, and go 1,500 miles up north without a flight suit, without goggles. Don't get me started on
oxygen.
Yeah.
Or a map, because nobody knows exactly where
they are.
Jon is north of the wall.
So, without any of that, and yet somehow, within 24 hours...
or less.
And that's being very generous. Within 24 hours, the dragons... And you know this is going to happen. That's the other thing that's just hugely disappointing. You know that this is going to happen. There's no stress at this point when the zombie army finally closes in and, oh my god, they're going to die. No, they're not going to fucking die.
We know that. At least they're not all going to die.
Yeah.
There was some chances in there. We thought Tormund was going to buy it there for a minute.
Yeah, and we don't know technically whether or not Tormund did with him being on top of the wall.
But in that fight.
Yeah.
He's not going to die off screen.
But in 24 hours or less, the Raven gets 1,500 miles south. There's agonizing, there's hand-wringing, and then a dragon gets 1,500 miles back north, finds them in the middle of frapping nowhere, and you're given to understand that north of the wall, the wild country is like Canada, without beer and hockey.
Or maple syrup.
And
nobody apologizes for anything.
Yeah. Somehow finds them in under 24 hours.
And shows up just in time.
It shows up just in time to rescue them.
Yeah.
It's
so bad.
So bad.
There's no good there. There's no happy. It's a horrible, horrible idea.
Yeah.
Everything about that episode was horrible.
And yeah.
For anybody who doubts our distances, because most maps of Westeros that you will see online don't have any kind of legend or scale to it, which I think is partially deliberate on George's fault. The one distance that we do know is that the wall itself is 300 miles long. So you take the distance of the wall, and then you can use that as your legend to determine various distances. And it's at least 1,500 miles. That bird was hauling.
On one tank of gas, it just hurts so bad.
He might be able to post a map so you can see it, and then we'll put a little marker. This is how big the wall is. This is how far the bird flew, and this is how far the dragons flew back.
Yeah, after we're done here, stay after the credits. If I can find a map, I'll throw something up there.
We'll find one.
It's so bad.
It's so bad,
and it takes you out of the whole thing. It just takes you out of the whole thing. Such colossally bad, cliched television. And when the dragons finally again, more of Daenerys' plot armor here. The criminal way that Dany uses her dragons, in spite of her access to strategic geniuses, she has access to the only air cav in the entire world.
Multiverse? Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
And she's had access to that air cav for quite some time now, but nobody has ever sat down, even while Barristan was still alive, widely regarded as one of the greatest military minds in that series. Nobody taught her how to use this cavalry. The dragons just kind of wander around going, low altitude strafing runs, never mind the physics involved in dragonflight.
Or fire.
Unless you're fucking Anne McCaffrey, which...
Nobody's fucking Anne McCaffrey.
Nobody's fucking Anne McCaffrey. Yeah. So bad. And then Viserion, is that the dragon?
Viserion is the one that dies.
Yeah, this Viserion goes down
Hard.
and the dead manage to produce chains.
Large numbers of chains, even though the North is supposed to be iron poor.
Which
No.
now that we're out of the lead fridge, now that the lead fridge has broken down and crumbled to dust,
They put the lead fridge and jumped it over a shark.
Yeah. Let's talk about the physics involved for just a second. You have to craft chains that are heavy enough duty that dividing the total load of a dragon being pulled through water. Never mind the fact that they make an issue out of how the undead don't swim very well. Somehow the undead got to the bottom of this body of water with these chains that they pulled out of their ass, fastened them around the dragon, and then they hauled the dragon up onto the top.
By its neck.
By its neck. Now, okay, I can maybe see from a tissue standpoint, I can maybe see the neck just not popping right off. I can maybe see that. But where are you going to come up with all the iron needed for the chains? You can't say that they had them in a supply wagon somewhere.
Because they're
the Night
whites
King,
and they don't need supplies.
yeah, the Night King couldn't have known, oh, they're going to bring me a dragon. Although maybe he did, because he just happened to have the Super Saiyan Javelins of Dragon Slaying +2 Vorpal
Seriously.
in
Vorpal.
his saddlebag. So they just happened to come up with these chains. How heavy do you think those chains would have had to have been?
Gigantic and huge and heavy.
And how did they, how do you bore that much weight on top of the ice? How did everybody not just immediately collapse in? Okay, take all these chains out of the ice and dunk! Okay, well, now we're boned.
Yeah.
That whole episode, cinematically, I understand why everybody has such a boner for that episode.
The dragon didn't have to go into the water. They could have completely cut that off.
Yeah.
It could have, flown off wounded, crashed on the other side of a mountain. That gives all the good guys time to get away while the zombies are looking for the dragon.
Yeah.
It didn't have to fall in the water.
Cinematically, it was a neat episode. It really, really was. But, and I don't know. It hurts my soul.
It was bad.
It hurts my soul. Very, very much so. I know that a lot of people really, really love this show, but this was...
Bad.
Yes. Quite bad.
This episode was maybe not quite as bad as season 5, but it was bad.
Danny continues to be a massive bitch.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the fact that in season 7, at least, they do make a point of...
People calling her on it a little bit? Well, not calling her on it, or at least worrying about it?
Yeah, the people are, okay, well, we've got another mad Targaryen.
Yeah.
With access to dragons.
In the saddle.
Who seems to love setting shit on fire.
Here's my main problem with Danny's swerve this season. For the first 6 seasons, Danny was the breaker of chains, the freer of slaves, Misa, whatever, mother, of all of her titles, the ones that she actually earned herself.
The benevolence.
Were the benevolent ones. She set slaves free. She, wrecked the masters,
all voluntary.
Sometimes she got, and now that she's made it back to Westeros, she is all of a sudden really, really concerned with people bending the knee.
Yeah, cake or death.
Yeah, it's like, here, you will swear your undying loyalty to me and obey all of my commands, or I will kill you. That's slavery. That's everything she has fought against up till now.
So I gave him a choice: tea and cake or death.
Yeah. And that is my main problem with her swerve, is that she wasn't like this back east.
Yeah.
Hollywood changed her.
And I don't know, maybe this is part of the descent. Who knows? Maybe Jon Snow.
Maybe it's the fact that everybody's just wearing black, so they all feel they have to be evil this season.
The wardrobe. Where are they getting all this shit?
Everybody was wearing black. I thought they'd all join the Night's Watch. They were all wearing so much black.
Even Gregor Clegane and his new...
the Kingsguard is now wearing all black. They used to wear all white. Now they wear all black.
All things considered, I actually thought that Clegane's new armor was kind of cool looking.
It was good looking.
Headpiece looked like looked like a tanker bug from Starship Troopers.
Kind of, but it was all black. The Kingsguard used to wear white. Now they're all black.
Also, Gregor Clegane, Sith, No, I didn't notice so much of it when he had his gold helmet on, but now that he's got the black helmet on,
The red eyes really stand out, don't they?
Got two beady little red eyes. He really, really does. He really, really does. The business of Jon Snow and Dany and whether or not he wants to bend the knee, and people keep busting his balls about, you're not bending the knee because of pride and this and that and the other.
No, I disagree.
That's not pride.
He's not bending the knee because if he does, the North is going to say, "Screw you! We're making your sister king."
Yeah,
they, he is a bastard, supposedly.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, he earned everybody's respect, and they appointed him king, even though there were other legitimate candidates. He's democratically elected. If the first thing he does as his democratically elected king is hand over the kingdom to another goddamn Targaryen, he's going to get impeached. And impeaching in the North usually involves something sharp and pointy.
Yeah. Usually it's not a cute cuddly thing, is what you're saying?
No, it's high. We're going to shiv you. And it happened to him once.
Yeah. A lot. Repeated shivings, even by a 9-year-old.
Yes, so incest. Season 1, it was icky. Season 7, everyone was rooting for it. Everybody wanted it to happen, except people. It's like, ick. It's a family affair.
The problem with a world that's as big as the one that R.R. Martin is building is he now has so many plates up in the air. And some of this I have to lay at his feet, and some of this I now have to lay at the feet of the television producers. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much input R.R. Martin has with all this at this point. The problem now is that his world is so big, he has so many plates that are up in the air. By the time season 7 has gotten here, you're ready for new shit to stop cropping up.
Well, a lot of those plates came crashing down during this whole season.
Yeah. And the business with who is Jon Snow and what went on up in the Tower of Joy.
Now, this is still Martin's notes. Apparently when HBO went to George and said, we want to produce your show, et cetera, like the one thing he asked them is like, well, if you know so much about my books, who's Jon Snow's real parents? And they told him, and he's like, all right, you've done your research. So this Jon Snow's parentage is seeds that have been planted since book 1, 21 years ago. You slow ass son bitch. So, those seeds are just now coming to fruit.
You think we're finally going to see Howland Reed?
I don't think Howland Reed's going to show up anymore. I thought he was going to be the secret keeper. Now, apparently, the Septon wrote down everything in his diary, and Bran has seen it in the pensieve, and I don't think Howland Reed is going to show up anymore.
Fucking Bran.
Bran and his loose antenna.
Let's. I'm going to skip ahead in my notes here a little bit. I understand what Bran has become, and I understand what the Three-Eyed Raven is now and how the Three-Eyed Raven functions. But I still... Maybe they explain this better in the books. It turns out they frequently explain shit better in the books.
More time.
I still don't know who in the F the Three-Eyed Raven is, or what his origins were, or how he relates to... Was he originally one of... What do they call them? The children? The fuckers who could throw fire? And
Children of the Forest.
The Children of the Forest. Was he originally one of the children? Who? Help me here. Who?
Okay. They don't go into this in the show, I believe, at all. But in the books, the Three-Eyed Raven that Bran meets is actually a Targaryen bastard from way back when. I think his name is... His nickname was Bloodraven.
Okay.
He was one of the great bastards who were bastards of noble birth that one of the old Targaryen kings signed.
I seem to recall us talking about this in maybe one of the earlier podcasts. I've whinged about the Three-Eyed Raven before.
It's possible. So he was a spy master for the Targaryen kings.
Yeah.
He'd lost an eye in a fight, so he had one eye, but then he supposedly had so many spies that they called him the man with 1,001 eyes. Okay. Somewhere along the way, he got sent north. He was Lord Commander of the Night's Watch for a little while, and then one day he just wandered north of the wall and disappeared.
Because he heard the call of the wall.
Because he heard the call of the children of the forest. He, had the prophesy visions of some of the Targaryens, and he joined with the children of the forest. They hooked him up to his tree, and he got, massive download speeds and lots of internet.
Broadband of the broadband of Westeros.
Broadband of the gods. Now, in the books, it's explained a little bit better in that the Three-Eyed Raven, or who was ever serving that role, is basically plugged into the weirwood trees. The white trees with the red leaves and the
what
bleeding.
Do they call them? The godwood?
They're usually in the godswood of various northern castles. They used to be all over the continent. The children of the forest could see through those, and they basically used them as reconnaissance in their fight against the First Men. The First Men started chopping down trees in response, so there are not nearly as many trees as there used to be. So basically, the Three-Eyed Raven, Blood Raven before, now Bran, can basically see anything that an existing weirwood tree can see, anything in its area, and is tapped into some sort of memory bank of everything that the weirwood trees have seen. So, going by the book explanation, Bran would not have been able to see what was at the Tower of Joy because there was no weirwood tree there. He wouldn't have been able to see a lot of the things that the show shows him being witness to.
The shit with Hodor becoming Hodor.
Yeah.
What, is there just a giant ass weirwood tree in the middle of the courtyard that the camera was panning around the whole time?
Exactly. There is one at Winterfell that everybody knows about, but it would not have seen everything that Bran saw.
Yeah.
So that is a show affectation to give Bran a little more
power.
Well, being able to see the stuff that happened in the past. I don't know how they're going to demonstrate Hodor's transition unless it happens in the Godswood.
What, Hodor's transition from Willis to Hodor?
Willis to,
they do it in one of the flashbacks in season 6.
Yeah, they do it in the flashback, but it happens in the courtyard. It doesn't happen where the weirwood tree would have seen. So I presume that same thing is going to occur just in the Godswood, etc.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
So yeah, he's tapped into Time Warner.
So the Blood Raven, I guess the children, the children of the wood, foreseeing there would be a need for, the all-knowing, all-seeing, whatever,
a weapon against the Night King. Yes.
Rather than plugging one of themselves into the tree.
I don't know if it required human blood as opposed to their own blood.
Chose to plug a random into the tree instead, who also had the gift of prophecy.
Also had some kind of gift of prophecy. Bran has the gift of warging, so maybe the children of the forest can't do that. So plugging,
Yeah, see, now we get into more of the same. Now we get into more of the same crap that we were riffing on earlier about Melisandre. The inconsistencies with which some of the big things, some of the big mechanics. There was I was reading a really interesting article online, and it's probably been a year ago or more. There's an author whose name is I think Brandon Sanderson is his name, and he wrote a series of books called the Mistborn books, which, for what it's worth, if nobody's read those are actually really, really neat. Sanderson is famous for building really good, really closed, really scrutinable systems of magic, and he has this really, really neat. He has this really, really neat article that he wrote about hard systems of magic versus soft systems of magic, and how all of the systems of magic in his worlds, in his books, were hard systems of magic, where the powers of his magic wielders were clearly defined, and because of that, you could really scrutinize them and understand that it was versus was not possible, as opposed to other systems in the David Eddings books. how sorcery, the will in the world, that's a soft system of magic. You're not quite sure what they are and are not capable of, but they never look at it really, really closely.
And if they do, they they doubt themselves, and then they wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah,
anyway,
then life, you're directed someplace else, and that's fine. It works because it's not just a Deus Ex Machina kind of a thing. This is one of those things when you clearly have a soft system of magic. To borrow from Sanderson a little bit here, you've got a soft system of magic, but they are examining it closely between the business with the Red God and the business with the Children of the Forest and the Three-Eyed Raven, and there's just loose threads everywhere. So yeah, I don't know if maybe they'll shore up some of that.
Mumford in a yarn store. It's just loose threads all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll shore some of that up in season 8, but
George isn't that refined. He's not that technical. He's not that structured. Even
that's too bad.
Yes,
that's too bad. Diverting from what we were just talking about a second ago, the last thing that I really actually have on my notes here, one of the last things anywhere, credit where it's due. I know we just spent a lot of time riffing about how bad the magic system, as it were, was in Game of Thrones. R.R. Martin, and to a lesser extent the show's producers, do apparently have a knack for writing buddy comedies.
Yeah.
We got Bronn and Tyrion first, and then later Bronn and Jaime. And then we got Tyrion and Varys. Less cool, but still fun to watch. And then we got
Tormund and Jon.
Brienne and Pod. Maybe the best one, Sandor Clegane and Arya. In, I believe, what is it, season 3?
Yeah.
Season 3.
Wherever
season
they're
4.
wandering off together. Arya and Jaqen Hagar.
Yeah. Less of a buddy thing there.
Well, they had their initial buddy thing when they were traveling north before he realized, everybody realized he was a faceless man.
Kind of a fun thing. Very briefly with Jon and Davos.
Davos and Stannis. They had great scenes together.
A great freaking scene with Jon and Davos when they finally go to meet Daenerys at Dragonstone. This is Daenerys Targaryen, Stormborn, blah 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 blah. 5 minutes of introduction later, and Davos is like, "This is Jon.
This is Jon Snow,
King of the North.
He's king of the North."
End of speech.
Not the world's greatest hype man.
Just
he should have gotten Tormund for that job, because Tormund would have laid out. Tormund would have laid out some titles. He would have been making stuff up.
Yeah.
He fucked a wolf.
Just a fantastic thing. But now finally, and I hope they do more with this in season 8 too, the Clegane and Tormund Giant's Bane.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, two sides of a coin.
Honestly, I want to just see a show with Clegane, Tormund, and Bronn just wandering the earth.
Yeah.
They would be a great D&D group.
It would be a fantastic D&D group. For everything else, for all the other problems that I have with the show, the buddy writing is so good. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It really, really is. The naming of principal characters. I believe I've been maintaining this list since the beginning of season 2.
You've only lost one.
I've only lost one off that list, and that was Tywin. On my list still are Arya, Sansa, Tyrion, Cersei, Jaime, Bran, and Dany.
I think we're going to lose a Lannister here next season. Cersei's not making it to the end.
Yeah, I don't think Cersei's making it to the end.
Whether Jaime or Tyrion kills her, one of them is going to kill her.
Predictions for deaths for season 8. While we're here, and I suppose I should probably write these down. People that we think are going to die in season 8. Everybody will die in season 8. We think that Cersei's going to.
I think Cersei's going to. Yeah, she's going to bite it.
We're Melisandre kind of prophesied.
Melisandre is prophesized to die. I think Arya is even prophesized to kill her.
Varys, that exchange between Varys and Melisandre.
Yeah.
About both of us need to come back to.
I don't know if Varys. I mean, I like Varys, but I'm not going to miss him if he dies. He had a weak season.
Yeah, he's a neat character. He really, really was, but they just never poured a lot of gasoline on.
He's not a good wartime consigliere.
He isn't.
He's a great peacetime one, but he's not a great time. He's not a great in war.
I would love it if he'd stuck around, but I think that Braun is probably going to get it in season 8 in pursuit of something.
Braun's a born survivor. I honestly thought that we would see Braun riding off with Jaime at the end when Jaime left King's Landing.
Yeah.
Because he has nothing else there. Cersei hates him. The actor and actress don't get along because apparently they used to date.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah, Braun and Cersei used to date in real life.
Braun and Cersei?
Braun and Cersei used to date in real life. They won't, and apparently she hates him so much she won't be on camera with him. Like when you had that the big meeting in the dragon pit, you see Braun take Podrick off. Apparently that's so they wouldn't have to have him on camera with her.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they don't like each other.
That's crazy.
But I don't know if you're going to lose. I don't know which of the secondary characters you're going to lose and make it meaningful.
I really don't. I would rather Braun didn't die. I really, really would. At this point, I'd like awfully not to see Varys die, but I think he's gonna, and I think that it would be a neat thing when he finally goes between him and Tyrion. I think that could be good television.
Now, this is my pure speculation, but I was looking at the game board, and I'm trying to figure out what does the world look like after the White Walkers are done. And this is what I came up with. You've got Jon and Dany ruling in Dragonstone and the North. So they've joined King's Landing and the North.
Okay.
And this is, kind of weird, but I've got Sansa remarrying Tyrion. So you've joined the Starks and the Lannisters.
Okay.
Because, everybody agrees. She, agrees that Tyrion was a good guy. Tyrion needs a happy ending, and he's run out of horse. So Tyrion and Sansa ruling in Casterly Rock. I think that Jon is going to legitimize Gendry, so he takes the Baratheon lands. And then if you want to really make some of the shippers happy, he marries Arya, because they had their little road trip early on.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of unanswered. They did kind of give us the other meaningful look. And while I was watching I think it was probably season 1 or season 2, I made that prediction as well. There was a meaningful, when you find out who Gendry is, and there's a meaningful look between Gendry and Arya, and you're like, okay, those two are gonna.
So yeah, that a lot of people are shipping those two. So you have the Starks joined with the Baratheons, the Lannisters, and the Targaryens. So you've got the core of the kingdoms reunited under one family. Sam becomes Lord of Tyrell. So you have the Southlands rejoined and his loyalty to Jon. You've got Robin over in the Arryn, who's technically related. You just have to give him a, decent guardian. If the Blackfish was still alive, the Tully, the Blackfish, he would have been a great mentor, but they'll dig somebody out. Davos would be a great protector of the realm for the area, for the Vale. And then nobody cares about the Southlands. Nobody cares about Dorne. So
pretty much.
And then,
because at this point,
whoever you want out in Pike, probably Yara, because Theon's not going to be able to do it. Theon, we didn't talk about him, and
we didn't talk about him.
The less screen time he gets, the better at this point. But
we
don't have to talk about him because he was pointless, and we didn't talk about the Martells.
We didn't talk about Euron. We didn't talk about Euron Greyjoy. We didn't talk about Yara. We didn't talk about Theon. I just can't be bothered with them anymore. No. I just don't care.
Yeah.
So much of the business with the Iron Islands just felt like it was bolted on.
Well, yeah, they used Euron as the Diabolus ex machina, swooping in and somehow flying from coast to coast, destroying fleets willy and nilly. Again, if you look at the map, trying to figure out how fast Euron had to get from Dragonstone, where he busted up the Martell fleet, all the way over to Casterly Rock, where he blew up the fleet that carried the Unsullied, is impressive.
I just can't be bothered. I can't be bothered with the Greyjoys.
Yeah. I've been tired of the Greyjoys for a long time.
I can't be bothered with the Greyjoys.
Or the Martells. The last
Yeah.
The last two are dying in the dungeons of King's Landing, and I'm honestly okay with that.
Yeah.
The sea fight was cool, but I didn't really care who came out of it alive. Everybody on those boats, it's like, sink it.
Yeah.
Sink them all.
Put the whole thing down. Put the whole thing down.
Burn the fleet.
I was legitimate. a goofy thing to wrinkle your brows over. You talk about couldn't be bothered. The fight up north of the wall when Clegane picks up Gendry's big hammer. Never mind the whole just break the fucking ice.
Just break the fucking ice. Clegane.
And then he drops the hammer and pulls out obsidian. Don't drop the fucking hammer. Gendry needs his hammer. Yeah. I ran all the way back to the shield wall and fuckers couldn't be bothered to carry my hammer.
Well, because it wasn't made of obsidian. It wasn't going to do jack against the zombies.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of catch up to do in season 8. I'm legitimately afeared for season 8. And at this point,
6 episodes to try to wrap everything up. You could do 2-hour episodes, and I don't think they'd be able to catch up at this point.
And
although that would get you the hours that you've lost back from this season, so they might be able to do it.
You've got to resolve the issue with the White Walkers.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to resolve the issue with Cersei.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way that what happens to Cersei is going to be satisfying. There's no way that what happens to Melisandre is going to be satisfying.
Especially since they're not going to have time for Melisandre, and it's going to be like kill her like Littlefinger.
There's no way that resolving the story with Daenerys is, well, not that was ever going to be satisfying.
There's going to be incest involved, though.
Bring back Khal Drogo. That's what they just need to know. No, he actually survived, and yeah, there's a lot of shit about season 8. They've got to finish telling a story, and there's just no way it's going to be satisfying.
They've got to wrap a lot of things up. You got to have a freaking dragon fight. That could be a whole episode.
Oh, yeah, I know, but the CG for that's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
when it finally happens, the zombie dragon. Oh my god. You know, the symbolism there. The whole business of ice versus fire.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden you've got a dragon that breathes blue fire.
We're not sure.
Yeah, we're not sure.
I have no idea how that worked.
Yeah, but the CG.
Oh, it was amazing.
The CG will, when that finally, when they do finally go to head to head, when Dragon and Viserys go head to head.
And Jon on Rhaegar, because it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
It should have happened when they pulled him out of the ice. Rhaegar should have been there to rescue him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm worried about season 8.
Well, the one thing you won't have to worry about is frostbite, because frostbite does not exist north of the wall.
Why did you have to bring that up? Frostbite, hypothermia, all of that shit.
None of it exists north of the wall.
Oh, that kills me.
It's just a chilly breeze.
That kills me. Yeah. Until then, stick around. There'll be other videos. It's going to be 2019 before we do another one of these. Before we do another one of these podcasts. But,
unless he reads the books, then we can do reviews of the books.
No, I can't be bothered to read the books. I really, really can't.
Well, you could do them with your wife, and she could explain to you in the books.
No, I probably won't read the books. I tried struggling through A Song of Ice and Fire many moons ago.
Well, how many times did you try to struggle through season 1?
That's fair. And you know what? Here we are after 7 seasons. I was reading something. This is the part of all the important shit's done. Fast forward to the end of the credits where we start talking about the map. Goddamn map. You know, I saw something online about how this culture unifying show that is Game of Thrones, and you mentioned something similar at the end of our season 6. At the end of our season 6 podcast about how the thing that really kind of stood Game of Thrones apart is it really has unified a lot of people from a lot of different
nerderies.
From a lot of different nerderies. Even some people that aren't, dyed-in-the-wool nerds. There are so many people that are just ecstatic about this show.
Because they like boobs.
And gosh darn it, that's... On one hand, I'm really, really glad that suddenly everybody has seen the virtues of potential shows that involve swords and sorcery. But gosh darn it, on the other hand, if this is what it took to unify the cultures, Christ almighty, I despair of people ever being able to make a show now without this stuff in it. I know I keep rabbiting on about Sorkin, but I despair of people being able to make a show like Game of Thrones. Wait a minute, I haven't seen a single boob since the show started. But you know,
well, there weren't a lot of boobs in season 7.
No,
not to the very end.
Not.
Did I tell you my theory
about what?
About the entirety of Westeros? Westeros is a beta pilot program for a new segment of Westworld. It's one of the other parks. It's a different experience in that instead of, you know, jumping into a storyline as a blank slate, you get a character at the beginning, and then you play that character. And right now, the main characters are Jon and Dany. And then some of the other major roles that are played by people, not hosts, are Arya and Sandor and Tyrion. And then most of the other players are hosts.
Well, maybe for Medieval World.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking. This is for Medieval World. This is their beta program.
No, I making shows like this in the future, knowing what they can do with Game of Thrones, and what they've done with Game of Thrones, are you going to be able to do it without all of the excessive nudity and violence and language? Can you make a really, really great swords and sorcery show with all of this stuff? I really, really hope that somehow, you know, we talked about Name the Wind and how Lin-Manuel Miranda is going to be doing the music for it.
Yeah. That's going to be a completely different show, though.
Yeah.
The scope of that's going to be so narrow and focused compared to this.
Oh, my God, it could be so good.
Oh, it's going to be great if they do it right. But you're not going to have to worry about Dany and Essos trying to figure out how to get her and 10,000 Dothraki Screamers and 8,000 Unsullied and 3 dragons back to the main plot. Because the main plot is 6 characters.
Yeah. Yeah. Nope. It's a different thing. We will see.
And it should be glorious.
It should be glorious. I'm looking forward to it.
It should be amazing.
In the meantime, check back in 2019 for the season 8 blog, and until then, keep your eyes on In Defense of the Awkward Moment for more things like this. Horrible closing.
Yeah, bad closing.
Horrible
we
closing.
have the whole map thing to do, so we can cover with that.
Stay until the end of the credits. Okay, so we said that we were going to talk about the map afterwards. So here you go. Welcome to Westeros, bright, sunny northern Westeros. Here you can see at the top of the map we have the wall circled in red for you, Castle Black, Shadow Tower, and Eastwatch. That top line there represents 300 miles. I'm assuming this is based off of...
That's what they say, is the wall is 300 miles long from the Shadow Tower to Eastwatch. Okay. Now, our boys ranged from Eastwatch, so we know exactly where the Raven would have come from.
Yeah. Now, this map here shows where good old Dragonstone is. Dragonstone is a fair little bit south of the wall, and to illustrate just how far south of the wall it is, now I want to show you this. This here is a full map of Westeros. The little red circle at the top is the wall. The little red circle close to the bottom is Dragonstone. Now,
if the wall is 300 miles long, rough determination shows that it is about 2,100 miles between Eastwatch and Dragonstone. Now, I don't know what the average flight velocity of an unladen raven is, or a semi-laden dragon is
2,100 miles. You're...
That's the distance, what, from Kansas City to Seattle?
2,100 miles?
About?
I don't know. Let's Google that. Let's Google that real quick. Hold on. Google.com. Kansas City, Missouri. I want directions. Where to? Seattle, Washington. Okay. Approximate trip distance is 1,836 miles.
Okay.
So
that's not even as the Raven flies.
you're talking...
And how long do they suggest that would take?
By foot?
No, well, by car, because
27 hours.
27 hours traveling at about 50 miles an hour, including stops and sleepovers and meals.
Yeah.
Ravens can get away with going to the bathroom on the fly, but they have to land eventually.
Now, if you and granted, this is 1,800 miles. We'll be generous and say 1,900 miles, as opposed to 2,100 miles. So there's 200 miles of additional distance here that we're not taking into account. The flight time from Kansas City to Seattle is 3 hours and 20 minutes
by jet,
which those are clipping along at what, 400 miles an hour?
400 to 500 miles an hour, depending on the winds.
So in a car. Reasonably, you're looking at 27 hours in a car moving at approximately 50 miles an hour. Now I have to know, how fast can a Raven fly? You'd think we'd have this shit prepared before we started recording. How far can Ravens fly in a day? Yada 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 yada.
Interestingly enough, the first result was in a Song on Ice and Fire website. Somebody has asked this question before.
Flights as long as 1,100 miles have been recorded by birds in competitive pigeon racing. So, this hurts my soul. Yeah. At any event,
average flight speed over moderate distances, about 500 miles, is about 50 miles an hour. All right, so say it's 50 miles an hour. Say it's as fast as the average car, including stops for gas.
A one-way trip is 27 hours.
Not including time for sleeping or eating or resting because it's a bird.
Yeah, the Raven just fell dead out of the sky when it was time. There's a dead Raven with a note on its wing in Dragonstone.
All right, so if it flies nonstop, which it can't do because it's a bird, 27 hours. Call it 29 for the extra 200 miles. Actually, 31, because if it's 50 miles an hour, you throw on another. All right, so call it 30 hours even. Nice round number. That's a day and a half. And then Danny has to get the note and read the note and have her tailors dash up a nice little white number for the northern climes.
Yeah.
And get her dragons ready and fly back. Oh, say they're faster than... Say they're twice as fast as ravens. So they're 100 miles an hour. That's 21 more hours?
It's still a 30-hour trip.
It's a good... Yeah.
Yeah.
The Magnificent Seven are dead. And they're dead because they didn't swing the hammer. No, they're not dead because they didn't swing the hammer. They're dead because in real world, hypothermia exists. They're standing on a bare rock in the middle of a frozen river with frozen river winds coming down.
Aren't you glad you waited until after the credits for this shit?
Oh, my. Every time I look at the map, it hurts me a little more. Just looking at that red line, how far it goes between Eastwatch and Dragonstone and back. And the fact that if you're going over the Vale, those are all mountains. And... yeah, make it stop.
2019, people. We'll be back in 2019.